Good day and welcome back to The Shed. Today I'm going to take a break from the ever-growing sci-fi shed ladder, where I've been reading and ranking all the Hugo and Nebula award-winning novels. And I'm going to go a little bit off script. I don't have any notes, and that's because I just want to share my passion for these novels with you. And two very interesting novels that I've read back to back deal with a dystopian future that I think you might enjoy. The first of which is Philip Jose Farmer's Dayworld, and the other one is Robert Scheckley's The Status Civilization. So I'll start with Dayworld, and I thought this was a very interesting premise as well. So we're dealing with this future society where the government has imposed this curfew on people living a full 7-day week. So you're allocated a day a week to live your life, and the rest of the time you're in this suspended animation, which the novel refers to as stoned or stoners. So that's rather interesting. And what we learn is that there's this guy called Jeff Caird, and he's a daybreaker. Basically, he's living more than just the one day. And what makes him interesting, he's part of this family of Immers, this group that sort of created the technology of these stoners in the first place. But they are sort of living every day. Not all Immers are daybreakers, but some of them have been allocated to be daybreakers, like Jeff Caird. And they sort of keep an eye and communicate between all the different days. And this has sort of put Jeff Caird in a rather interesting situation, because he's living multiple lives and he has multiple personalities. So much so that he has a different wife for every 7 days, for every day of the week. He has a completely different family. Sometimes there's a priest, sometimes there's a family man, etc. So it becomes rather interesting. And what we learn is that Jeff Caird has been sort of discovered by the, or is at least being investigated by the powers that be, the police force in this book. And that's sort of put the Immers in a spot of bother as well, because they want to keep undercover and don't want to be revealed. So this has put him at odds with the Immers as well as the government and the police in this book, and it all sort of comes crashing into a head. And I found it to be a wonderful novel. So I'm going to keep my likes and dislikes pretty brief so we can get onto the Status Civilization as well. So it goes without saying that I thought the premise was really, really good. I mean, it was a wonderful premise to be able to live in a world where your whole world is made up of this day. And you go into, self-imposed stoner sleep at the end of your day, and you're put into suspended animation for the whole week. And it was rather interesting to see how, your life would really be like that, right? Your world is really the people that surround you. And that was very apparent in this particular novel, which I thought was a very, very interesting thought experiment. The other thing that I've always enjoyed with Philip Jose Farmer is his look at religion, and this plays a fair bit of part in Dayworld religion. He meets this Orthodox Jew, and it sort of gets rather interesting when we talk to this, when he has a discussion with this Orthodox Jew around how they keep the Sabbath, and also in line with other religions as well. I thought it was rather interesting, typical Philip Jose Farmer. Look, the only thing I would say was a bit of a dislike for me. I thought the ending wasn't quite that great, but I'll forgive it because there are some pretty interesting sequels to this novel as well, which I'll talk to when we talk about similar novels. Now, when it comes to the Status Civilization, this was again another brilliant premise. Again, we have this dystopian future, and we have this guy called William Barrett, and he's just woken up with amnesia, and he doesn't know where he is. He's got no understanding of his past life, and he soon realizes that he's going onto this planet called Omega, and Omega is a penal colony. Now, he doesn't understand what he's done, but it soon becomes apparent that he's actually killed somebody. So he's been convicted for murder, and he has to live his sentence off on this planet called Omega. Now, Omega has a life expectancy of 3 years, so it's not looking good for William Barrett, but he lands on the planet and he's automatically being chased and people are trying to kill him. And what we learn is that this world that he lands on, this planet Omega, has a rather interesting religion, because they sort of worship this black one or this dark one. Basically, they believe in evil, and evil being the source of truth on this planet. And it's sort of, you'd think it would be a utopia for all these criminals, but it doesn't quite happen to take shape that way. So what we find is Will is constantly at odds. There's someone always trying to kill him. And you find that the only way to really succeed in this world is to break the law. So he's, arrested and tried to put to death for not being a drug addict or not having killed somebody. So to make it through this civilization and to increase your status, you have to be breaking the law at every opportunity. Now, William Barrett seems to be one of these nonconformists. So he's finding it difficult to sort of fit into this world, but he's got some uncanny abilities that help him progress through that status civilization. Now, what's rather interesting as well, that he's eventually put into this game because he's breaking the law too many times. And this game's a bit like the Hunger Games, where everyone's out to kill these individuals. I think there was 15 or 16 of them. And if you happen to live through the course of the day before these people trying to kill you, you basically get the opportunity to meet the Dark One. So then the scene is set. Is William Barrett going to win and survive through this game? And will he actually get to meet this Dark One? And will he get some answers to his past? Again, a very interesting novel, very cool premise. So what I'd have to say about this one is that it's only about 120 pages and it absolutely flies through. The prose is pretty simple like you'd expect, but it does cover a fair bit of world and world building, and it is a very quick novel, a very quick read. And I did like that spin on the problem of good and evil, good versus evil, because there is a bit of a psychological argument here, a philosophical argument I should say, where one of the priests of this order of the Dark One tries to explain the problem of good as opposed to the problem of pain in our sort of normal construct, third world Christian religious beliefs. So it was sort of rather interesting how this guy tried to explain the problem of good in a world that is ruled by an evil force that is to be worshipped. So I thought that was rather interesting. Again, a very interesting and fascinating premise in this one. The penal colony book, should be careful how I say that, but the penal colony sort of concept has been done before, but it is done a very interesting way that has an interesting twist to it as well. So what is there not to like in the Robert Scheckley's The Status Civilization? Look, this one I would say is a satirical novel, but some of Robert Scheckley's shorter works, and I've read a couple of his short stories as I was starting to do some background research, I actually realized I have read a couple of his short stories, and they're probably some of the funniest science fiction that you'll find out there. Some would say that he was inspirational to the likes of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I've just had my coffee and I'm buzzing. But anyway, some say he was very inspirational for Adam Douglas and the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But this one was definitely satirical in nature. But I'd say that I was looking forward to a bit more, humor in this one. Look, but it is still a very good novel. And I did forget to mention that in Dayworld, the previous novel by Philip Jose Farmer, there's a funny scene in that novel which I thought was brilliant, where Jeff Caird, one of his personalities, has an alarm clock, and he's a bitterly divorced man in one of his personas, and he has his alarm clock being his ex-wife nagging at him to get out of bed because she had a really shrieking, awful voice that was constantly at him, which I thought was just a funny concept. It had me laughing out loud. Now, I'm happily married and have been for over 30 years, so I don't think that kind of alarm clock would work for me. It'd probably keep me in my slumber, but I thought it was absolutely brilliant. So look, both very interesting novels if you like your vintage science fiction dystopian novels. Now, Philip Jose Farmer's novel was written in 1985, but it takes its roots from a short story written in 1971, and it does read like something that is a lot older than 1985, which I found interesting as I was reading along. It does really read like Philip Jose Farmer's earlier works, some of the stuff that he wrote in the 70s. And The Status Civilization was written in 1960, or at least released in 1960. So I highly recommend it to you science fiction vintage fans who want to see how parents and grandparents thought about the future and some of the evils that may be just around the corner from us. So two very interesting novels. I rated The Status Civilization a 3.5 out of 5, and I ranked Dayworld a 3 out of 5, only because I wasn't very convinced with the ending, but the premise I thought was really well done as well. Now, similar novels that we've read, or not necessarily read to date, is Dayworld Rebel the sequel to Dayworld? And I'd say this one is definitely a highly recommended read for those of you who enjoyed Dayworld, because it sort of takes on from there and sheds a little bit more light. And in typical Philip Jose Farmer fashion, I think if you've enjoyed Dayworld, I think you will enjoy the sequel. Now, when it comes to other Philip Jose Farmer novels, one that is ranking really well on the Sci-Fi Shed Ladder is To Your Scattered Bodies Go. Now, I found this to be absolutely brilliant. And there is a sort of element here of that suspended animation, because the main protagonist in this novel wakes up in that state where he completely doesn't know where he's at. He doesn't know what's happening. He finds himself fully rejuvenated onto this large river world. And he's trying to understand what this resurrection of the dead actually means. So I think if you've enjoyed Dayworld and you've yet to read To Your Scattered Bodies Go, I'd say have a go. One of my absolute classic favourites. Really interesting novel. One of the novels that made me a Philip Jose Farmer fan. And I'd say that if you've enjoyed this one, have a go at Dayworld. I think you'll see some of the similarities there. Now, when it comes to, nonconformists that we saw in the Shattered Civilization, in that dystopian future, and how they treated these nonconformists, I think if you enjoyed that concept, I'd say have a go at Fritz Lieber's The Wanderer here as well. A very interesting first contact novel, this one, and I think, without giving spoilers away, I say if you've enjoyed the Shattered Civilization, have a go at this one. I think you'll enjoy it as well. Now, when it comes to satirical science fiction, I'd have to say that Kurt Vonnegut's Cat's Cradle, that we have read and reviewed on this channel in the past, is an absolute classic when it comes to satirical science fiction. Now, this takes a look at an alternate sort of universe almost, at the father of the atomic bomb, and it has a rather interesting, very satirical view of the world that I really did enjoy in The Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut. So I'd say if you want to get, if you've enjoyed The Shattered Civilization, and you want to read a little bit more of satirical science fiction, I'd say have a go at Kurt Vonnegut's Cat's Cradle. I think you'll enjoy that as well. Now, when it comes to The Shattered Civilization, many times it took me back to, Harry Harrison's Death World, where there's 3 novels in the series that I just absolutely love the cover arts for. But at times, as I was reading The Shattered Civilization, it did take me back to Harry Harrison's Death World, especially the first one. So I'd say if you've enjoyed Harry Harrison in the past and Death World, have a go at The Shattered Civilization. I think you'll enjoy it. Well, there you go. 2 very interesting, dystopian futures that look at, different ways to control the populace that I found very interesting and just wonderful vintage science fiction. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed that. A little bit ad hoc, no notes taken, me getting in front of the camera. Because next week, I wanted to get these 2 short novels out of the way, because I finally got around to reading a TBR that's been, to be read, that's been on my list for, I don't know, it must be years now. And I'm finally reading it, and I'm about half of the way through it. And I can already say I'm really going to enjoy this one. And I'm looking forward to reviewing and sharing that one with you. So I hope you don't miss out by hitting that like and subscribe and notification bell, where I hope to break that one down and explain what I saw in this wonderful novel. Until then, I've been Peter, this has been The Shed, and I'll see you next time in The Shed.